morning, our colleagues. Good morning, students. Meet our guest, a professor from New Mexico University. I think you know that New Mexico is located in the southwest of America. Well, she is a PhD. You are a PhD. Valerie Sartor. I think, Valerie, you are just a very multicultural person. Just to prove this idea, I would mention the two facts. Your ethnic background comes from both American and Finnish and French. Am I right? Yeah. And the second idea is that your PhD is devoted to cross-cultural educational problems.
Yes.
So it means that Valerie Sartor, apart from us, is a very multi-language and multicultural person. I think you will be very active and you will be asking a lot of questions. Well, our activities are arranged this way. So we have 3 classes today. The first one is devoted to common errors of bearers of other cultures while speaking and acquiring the English language. Then next lesson is devoted to speaking, and the last one is devoted to writing. Okay? Well, good luck to you and to us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. And I'm going to talk to you about this morning. First, I'll tell you just a little bit about myself. I put this map of the United States to show you, to give you some idea. This area of the world is called the American Southwest. This area of the world we speak Spanish. It's the dominant language, although English is the language of the United States. So my home is here, this small state, New Mexico, and my home is up here, Santa Fe, the capital. It's a very empty state, a very rural state. It's also a state that's famous for indigenous languages. Within 100 kilometers of my city, there are 22 languages spoken by the people who lived before the Americans, the white Americans came. So there are Tiwa languages, Toa languages, Navajo languages, Cherokee, all kinds of indigenous languages are spoken within 100 kilometers of my city. So my university is specialized in looking at how to preserve languages that are losing popularity with globalization. That's what my dissertation was about. I've been to Ulaanbaatar twice visiting Buriat families because my dissertation followed Buriat children who went to northern China, to the capital, Hohat, to study Chinese, and then to go on to become doctors of Mongolian and Tibetan medicine. And Inner Mongolia, China is the only place where they can do that. There's now one school, an alternative Mongolian school in Ulaanbaatar, that you can study alternative medicine too. But my dissertation focused on watching these children, watching what happened to them, how they felt from coming from Russia, where Russian is the dominant language, and then going to China, where Mandarin, another dominant language. So the children were learning to speak Mandarin and a variety of Mongolian, and it was quite hard for 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. So it was a very interesting dissertation basically about the politics of language and how it impacts children's identity. So that's a little bit about myself. So let's go on and talk about the common errors that I see in my language students, my Russian-speaking language students. So the first, and I won't put them in order of importance, just talk about a little bit of what I've seen over time in the 7 months that I've been teaching English. The first one has to do with time. Time, right? Time is difficult to talk about, especially when we talk about things like summer, spring, winter, fall. What's the preposition? In the summer. So already you have a problem here. Are you going to adopt the British speaking? Are you going to adopt the American style? Because the Americans, we're using more articles. We say in the summer. It's the same thing. The article problem is the same in terms of university. I study at university. That's the British. What's the American? At the university. Again, the articles. So I study at university. So that's British. Americans like these articles. They like them so much. And this, I have to tell you, for advanced speakers, for near native speakers of English, for Russian near native speakers of English, using the articles a, and the is extremely, extremely difficult. Why? Why is it so hard?
Because there is no articles in Russian.
Exactly. Excellent. 10 points. There are no articles in Russian. So how do you know when to use an article? What's the general rule for using an article? A and the. When do you use it?
Something you know already, something you don't know, you mentioned for the first time.
Specific, to specify. The glasses. But what would be better than the glasses?
Single, plural, also.
So what would I say?
The exact.
These glasses, because glasses is really a non-count, but it's plural, right? So that's a little complicated. It would be here, the phone. But if it's just a phone, any phone, right? So that's one rule for specifics. The other thing about the articles is what? When do we use an article? How about, is it the Jane?
Proper names.
These are proper names.
No article. Zero article.
A Jane? The Jane?
Just Jane.
Jane. But it's the Russian Federation. So what's the difference here?
Phrase.
This phrase. There is a word for it.
What's the difference between Jane and Russia?
Collocation in second case.
Geographical.
Geographical.
This is a geographical location. This is a person. So a person, something that a human being, no article. Unless you're talking about if this is Mrs. Smith and this is Mrs. Smith. Both of them have the same name, and I'm saying, which one is the Dr. Mrs. Smith? This one. So again, for specific, to be specific. But if it's a human being, usually no article. And then there's the funny thing about the Russian Federation. What about Germany? Is it the Germany? No. So what's the rule with articles?
Unless it is specified.
Well, Germany's pretty specific.
It's one word, and if you have like more than one word, like the federation, the kingdom, like this, so you use the article.
The article used for yes, I think you're correct, yes. The other thing is, for proper nouns such as, let's say, is it the Ulan-Ude? Ulan-Ude is a proper noun, it's a name, right?
It is. All phrase.
But the city of Ulan-Ude. Okay. So this is the first error that I see all the time because it's so complicated. It's something you have to hear, something you feel with your heart. It's irregular. It's very, very strange. And it doesn't exist in Russian, thank God. So I don't have to worry about it in Russian. So, where's my rule? So the articles, but to go back to time, if we go back to the problem of time, In this time we are learning English. Is that correct?
This time.
What should be the preposition?
Just this time.
So in this time we are learning English. At this time we are learning English.
In this time, isn't it?
In this time, it's kind of a Russian translation. You know, this is a big problem when we go from one language to another language. We're translating from our native language to the second language. And it sounds right because the pattern is correct in our first language. But really, in this time, would be much better said as now. So to be a fluent speaker, you have to be able to think, okay, this pattern is correct in my language. Technically, it's correct grammatically. But what is the natural way to say it? And it would be the same as in Russian, сейчас. But you have a formal way, you know, kind of say. But now. And then we have another way nowadays. So that's more slang, which is another problem we'll talk about. Okay? So in this time, at this time, very odd to my ears. I would rather just say now. Okay? So that's a problem. The time thing is a problem. And the British in summer, in the winter, in the academic year, in academic year 2014. So you have that choice to put your article, the or not. But you should be consistent. If you're going to write like a Brit, keep it out. If you're going to write like an American, keep it in. Okay? Okay? Another time marker that's very interesting that I see as an error, common error with everyone is this young woman was talking to me about last year. She said, before I had work. What's wrong with that marker?
Before, there shouldn't be before.
What should it be?
You gotta say in last year I had work.
Yes, but you can use a different marker. You could say last year I had work. Yes, that would be correct. But if you're going to put that time marker in, what would you put?
Prior.
For that, for some after.
Previously, you'd use the adverb of time. Previously I had work. But in Russian, it's just раньше, right? It's before. Yeah. It's different. This is the translating from one language to another is so different. So I would use, as a native speaker, I would use previously. In 2014, I had work.
And what about the British version?
I don't know what they would do. They would probably just use what this young professor said was the date, the time. In 2014, I had work. But the adverb of time would be previously.
What about before that? I had work.
If you were talking in spoken speech, you could say before that. You'd have to use the clausal marker for that. Yes. But academically, the adverb of time. So these time markers are very, very complicated. They're very, very... Let's look at another one. This is something that I see with my students. I teach master's students who are studying to be translators. And they're always writing, because we write essay papers, we write research papers, we talk about the word choice, we talk about this, we talk about that. And every research paper that they write about, they talk about researches. What's wrong with that? It's a non-count. And in Russian, you can make it plural. No. Advices. In Russian, you can make it plural. So how do we take, if somebody is doing different kinds of research, I'm doing research on the Tiwa people, I'm doing research on the Towa people, and I'm doing research on the Navajo people. I'm doing researches. How do I say it correctly then?
Pieces of research.
The measure marker. So I'm doing 3 kinds. Here's your plural. 3 kinds of research are 3 types of research, are 3 projects of research, 3 research projects. That kind. You need the measure word. What about for advice? Let me give you some pieces of advice. What about information? Kinds of information, pieces of information. And if you're a computer techie, maybe it's bytes of information. So you need to put your plural marker in the measure word, not in the non-count noun. So what are the other non-count nouns? What other types of non-count nouns? We have research and information, news. So these are nouns that are specifying things. What other non-count categories are there? Fruit, food. So sugar, fruit, meat. And how do I make the marker for them? Some, many,
A lot.
a lot. What else can I do to it?
A little.
Kilo. So you can do it by weight. You can do it by weight. So substances also are non-counts that you need the measure word if you're going to specify. What's another non-count category? Love. So feelings. Abstract nouns and feelings. Love, hate, envy, jealousy. Can you have jealousies? No. So how do you make jealousy into a count noun? Jealousy. Love into a count noun. Much love, much jealousy. So it's really not counting, it's more just adding bulk, right? Not specifically counting. Then we come to the problem of much, many, some, any. What's the rule? Much and many. Many, count. Much, non-count. Some,
Both.
I have some research to do. I have some cell phones to buy. So it's both. What about any?
Questions, negatives.
Does it matter if it's count or no count?
No.
No, it doesn't matter. But it's confusing. It's very confusing. So how to teach this to your students? How do you learn some, much, many?
This is, I think, written in all textbooks.
You just have to do it over and over and over again and try to remember it. Okay? You learn by heart the rules? Yes. Russian students learn really well languages, by the way. I'm very impressed. Well, I have another question that is a problem that I see very frequently, and it has to do with these two. Make and do. Make and do. So, Vladimir, money. does the dishes. My sister, yoga,
Does yoga.
does. How about Yevgeny? Football.
Plays football.
Very good. Very good. I was trying to trick you. The make and the do are very interesting. And then we get to sports, because what about the yoga? What about Pilates? What about aerobics? And all of those are really much women's sports. I do my yoga. So why do we use do, but you play sports?
Personal, if it's not team.
Team is play. So the team sports, soccer, play, football, play, baseball, play, hockey, play. So the team sports, you're right. This is the play. But what about, I love to swim. So do I play swim?
No.
Do I do swim?
Go swimming.
You go. You go swimming, or you simply swim. So, if it's something you do with your body independently of a team, you just swim. You just ski. You just walk. Or you go. Go swimming, go skiing, go walking. But those three sports for the women, yoga, Pilates, aerobics, they are do. Why are they do?
Exercises. You do that personally.
You do exercises. Well, I do this swimming personally too. But the three lady sports are do. The only thing I can tell you is that they're new. They came, maybe your mother does yoga. Maybe not. It's a fairly new thing. It's only come into our world from India in recent years. So it's new. So somebody decided to say, okay, we're not going to yoga today. We're going to do yoga. So it's a created phrasal verb. It's new. It's new. Okay?
What about extreme sports?
That's interesting. Bungee jumping. Do you do bungee jumping, or do you go bungee jumping?
Go.
You do it. What about paragliding? You do it. These are new sports. You do it. And actually, it's not certain, because those sports are even newer than yoga, Pilates, and aerobics. Some people will say, I'm going paragliding. Some people will say, I'm going bungee jumping, because it's such a new sport that the dictionaries have not decided what's the correct use. It's very interesting. New words, new verbs come into our language all the time. One of the things about English that has made it such a successful language is that English has adopted many, many words and many kinds of grammatical particles from other languages. Starting in the 8th century, when the Romans built the road to England, and we got some of the Latin words, and then the Vikings came down, and we got a lot of Norse words that are now Danish words. 1066, the French came for 130 years. 60% of the English language, the vocabulary, the higher register, is a French word. Okay? So English is a very flexible language. And the flexibility has also made it really difficult to learn. When do you know what's correct? If new words are coming in, and if you have grammatical particles from the French, grammatical particles from the German, grammatical particles from Anglo-Saxon and Old Danish, they're all different. It makes it difficult. So, I have another question. We've talked about make and do. Let's talk about the other ones. You know the conditionals of must, should, and need. And then we have want, like. I see this mistake with my Russian students all the time, all the time. I want to eat, infinitive. I must. I must do. I must eat. Isn't that interesting? It is probably the most common mistake for my master students, because they know these are all helping verbs. This is the conditionals of the need, want. If you must something, I must sleep, I must eat, I must study, I should study. If I don't study, I will not pass the class. I like to study. I want to eat. Boozy. Right? So this one is taking the infinitive, this one is not. And they are so similar because they're both expressing desire. Right? You must do something, or you like to do something. Very, very confusing. This one is one to write down and remember. Okay?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is there any difference between using a gerund and infinitive up to life?
It's okay.
It's okay.
I like swimming.
There is no difference.
Yes, the gerund, the ing is, or the infinitive. Yes, yes. But should you be I should eating? No. This one has got more flexibility. I like to eat, I like eating. So you can use the gerund or you can use the infinitive.
What about this? Doing yoga is exciting and to do yoga is exciting. There's no difference again.
Yes, no difference. Yes. Just stylistic. Yes. Okay. But these should be distinguished.
What about the usage of must? They say that it's more hospitable to say you must visit my house.
Mm-hmm.
Does it really sound more hospitable?
Yes, and I think that's also from British usage, and it's in the American usage too, because should implies obligation, and must implies also obligation, but it has, because it's extreme, it also has the idea of hospitality. In terms, it's a polite form. It's mutated into being a kind of a request. Yes, it's an interesting verb. Okay? Because this is really more powerful than should.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of making a request, it's more polite. So here's another one. You know, I have tried on my own when I have time to learn Russian, and it's hard. It's hard. I have to tell you that one thing that is always, always confusing to me are the verbs in motion. When is it chodit? When is it et? When is it paiti, zaiti, uti, blah, 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 and all those prefixes, et. So you have verbs in motion, a very complex system of talking about moving objects, moving people, moving things, right? In English, one of the most interesting things that I see with Russian students in terms of using the verbs of motion is the idea of come and go. Come and go. Go is pretty simple. I go to school. I go by bus. I go here, I go there. But when my students talk to me and they say, I come back from my home. I came back from Germany. What's wrong with that? If you come back.
When you return from somewhere.
Exactly. Return. This idea of come back is a translation from Russian. We use the word вернуть. We don't use come back. We use the word return. So take it out of your vocabulary. I come back. A comeback actually means something in English. It's a movie term. If you're making a comeback, maybe Angela Jolie, she decided to have a baby. So she leaves the movie business and she raises her baby. Oh, I love you, baby, 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 right? And she doesn't make a movie for 10 years. And then she decides to make a comeback. Here I am, going to make a movie with Brad Pitt, right? She made a comeback. So a comeback is when an actress or an actor or a politician, like say George Bush wanted to be president again. He wants to make a comeback. So it's a term about a person returning to their old job to make a comeback. So if you're using the word of coming back to Russia, coming back to university, you are returning. You're returning. Not coming back, you're returning. Okay?
What about go? Go back.
Go back. Also very clunky. To go back. To go back would be also to return. See, this is the interesting. Come, go. They're both return. In Russian, you can come back and go back.
Come back to Australia.
Return. Yeah. Yes. Because in Russian, the verbs of motion will allow you to say it that way. But in English, it sounds very odd. Technically, it's okay. I mean, your language skills are quite high. And I'm just trying to smooth the style. You can say, technically, I came back. But in terms of listening and fluidity and naturalness of the language, it's I returned. Okay? So come and go, verbs of motion, very difficult. There's another one. Where's my glasses? Ah! Oh! So take is a very odd word. Take. I took her phone. I took it. You take an exam. So take means to physically move something toward the direction of yourself. Receive is on the opposite end. If I give her the phone, she takes it. She also receives it. That's confusing. Give me the phone, I take the phone. I received it. I give her, she takes it, she receives it. So take and receive are similar. But take is the physical action of hold. Receiving is after the action. Do you see? It's a small difference. It's a small difference.
And what about receive a result?
You can receive your results, yes.
We can't take.
You take the exam and you receive the results. Take is a more active. Receive is more, it's in your hands. Take is, you take it from me. I give it to you, you take it. And then you've received it. It's different in Russian. It's very different in Russian. I still don't understand it correctly in Russian. I make mistakes with this one. But it's interesting. And it's something Dr. D was talking about, the cultural context of how we perceive time and space. It's very different in different languages. So these verbs, okay? And then put in place. These are old words. So if you put something, I put chalk on the table. I also placed it on the table to put it there. Put. What's the past tense of put? Put. These weird little verbs, these old little, I think they're Celtic words, I think. Put, hit, cut. These are very strange because they're just little 3-syllable verbs. And their present and past doesn't change. And then we have those other verbs. Drink, drank, drunk. What language is that coming from? Drinking, drank, and drunken. German, right? So now you have to learn the Celtic, and then you have to learn that. And what about ED? Yeah. So another set of verbs. And then there are more. The French ones. Oh my God. No. Okay. So, in terms of writing, every good writer has to make transitions. When you're writing a paper in English, you have to transition from one idea to another idea. The simplest way to make that transition is by time, right? You can say first, or as the British do, firstly, second, secondly, third, thirdly. Transitioning through time, right? A very simple way to make a transition. You can transition through space. You can say, while I was in Russia, I studied Russian. While I was in Mongolia, I studied Mongolian. While I was in China. So you can transition through space using maybe the while or in. In Russia, I studied Russian. In China, I studied Chinese. So those are the simple kinds of transitions. But when you start to write at a higher level, you need more complicated transitions. And then you actually abandon most of your transitions and you use clauses, gerund clauses or other clauses. So this Russian transition is what? In order to. In order to pass your exam, you must study every day. Okay? So another transition. Moreover. Give me a sentence with that one. Moreover.
Moreover, you happen to be a multicultural person.
Moreover, so this is an addition. This one would be in addition. These are synonyms. Additionally. Also. So all of these are adding information. They're the also. Different from the but in order to. What about what's the difference between moreover and nevertheless?
It's a contradiction.
Yes. Do you young ladies know that? Yeah. Yes. Because I see this in the writing. I see this in writing, not your writing, I haven't seen your writing, but my Irkut students, I see them. They make the mistake of thinking these two are the same. This one has a contradiction, an opposition. This one is just adding information. Just adding new information. Okay?
It's like but. No? Nevertheless, but.
They can be used. This one's a little more sophisticated than but. It's a simple conjunction, and or but. This one would be, well, You could use but if you wanted to go higher in your register, you use this. And every time you use one of these transitions, what do you put after it?
I'd like to say comma.
A comma. A comma. Whenever you use an adverb of time, frequently, significantly, something like, or a transition, you must use a comma. It's part of the rules of punctuation. It's different in Russian. Okay? Let's talk about punctuation. Let's talk about punctuation. What's the difference between semicolon, colon, and comma? What's the difference? Comma, semicolon, colon. Use a comma when?
When we enumerate.
Enumerate, so listing. He likes apples, oranges, bananas, peaches, and pomegranates. Okay? Do you use a comma before the and? How many think yes? How many think no? They're both correct. They're both correct. It's a stylistic choice. It depends on the style guide you use. It depends. The Brits can never decide. But in the United States, if you're writing an academic paper, if you use a certain style, I use the APA style, American Psychological Association, MLA, Modern Language Association, Chicago Book of Style. Every style book will tell you when you're using the comma for listing apples, oranges, pomegranates, and grapes. The style book will tell you yes or no. They're both correct. The question is if you use it, do it consistently. If you don't use it, don't use it. Okay? What about this one, the semicolon? What's the semicolon for?
Separation clauses.
Two different ideas, two different clauses. So, how about if I said, this young lady is from Ulan-Ude. Ulan-Ude is a city that's quite beautiful. Would I use a semicolon? No?
These are separate in these two sentences.
So you would break it.
Yes.
When would you use a semicolon?
If they are close to each other.
For example,
This girl is from Ulan-Ude. The majority of the girls are from other cities.
okay, good. The other thing is, can you use semicolon in listing too? Can you list things?
Yes.
So when do you use the comma and when do you use the semicolon for listing?
If the listed things are complicated, if they have internal commas within them.
Oh, very good. Very good. That's perfect. That's exactly right. Did you all hear that? Do you understand what she said? Okay. And what about this? Colon.
Giving illustrations, examples.
How about in letters? Business letters. Colon or comma? Dear Dr. Vladimirovich, I want to attend university.
Comma.
Comma. How many think comma? How many think colon? They're both correct. It depends on your style. It depends on your style guide. I think the British use this more frequently than the Americans. But for formal letters, most American books will use colon. For informal letters, most Americans will use comma. But it really is a personal choice. The rules of punctuation are not set in stone in English. They're not set in stone.
It's very good. Because for us, the Russian punctuation is very just severely if you just make it.
It's formal, it's cement. And something that Russian punctuation does that is very strange to me is if I say, she is Russian, is the Russian a big R or a little R?
It depends.
I see my students writing little r. She is Russian. But if they talk about the Russian Federation, they put big letters. So what's the rule in English?
Russian for capital.
Country nationalities, the languages, they go with capital letters.
It has to be big letters. All of it. If I write, she is Russian, in English with a little r, it's disrespect. It's an insult, actually.
Yeah.
But it's done in Russian punctuation. I've seen it. My students have insisted to me, no big letter, no big letter.
Just a Russian way of thinking.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
the interference of the Russian order of things.
So a person is not important.
No, not this
It's just
way.
an adjective.
It's a formal way of thinking. Just including mixing the two language orders.
It's very interesting, very different. So punctuation. How about, let's look at some words that are pretty much the same in English and Russian. I want to know the difference between
Dye hair means something like gate, house.
you paint a house and dye your hair.
Yeah.
Cause and reason. Cause and reason. What's the difference?
Cause make something change. The reason just some fact is the result of which something happens.
Something, something. You see this?
So maybe you could make a sentence saying, she became pregnant. That's the reason she married him. The cause was the pregnancy. The reason she married him. She married him because she was pregnant. Not because she loved him, because she was pregnant. So the cause and the reason, they're close. They're different. Okay? Win and beat. Win and beat. Win.
In the competition,
I won the
beat them, have beat them. Like,
In the competition, I beat the others.
somebody.
So I won. So are these the same?
You can win in the competition, but you can beat someone, but not in the competition.
Why not?
And beat in the competition, beat them in the competition.
No, that's interesting. You win a prize, you win a competition, you win a scholarship. You can't beat a scholarship. You can't beat a prize. But you can beat someone. And then we have the idiom, beat, to beat the odds. If you beat the odds, it means, for example, you have to compete with 10,000 people for a scholarship. All of them are in Moscow. You're the only one from Ulan-Ude. But you won. You got the scholarship. She beat the odds. The chance for her to win was very low, but she beat the odds. And then we have this word beat. What does beat mean? To beat someone, right? And then beat also means something in music. What does it mean in music? The beat, right? So you have this word that's a homophone. It has many meanings. Same spelling, same pronunciation, many meanings. But win and beat, a little close, not too close. Here's the last one I'll give you. I'm sure you know this one. Study and learn. Study and learn. I study mathematics. I learn mathematics.
Learn something?
You can learn something. Yeah. I study mathematics. I learn mathematics. Are they the same?
Another new things more. Different positions in the system.
Study subjects, but not learn subjects.
I learn math. I learn math.
If I think that I know it well, I should say, I've learned tests. But I constantly studied.
So this one is more abstract, the philosophical process of learning, right? Study is something, it's an action you do when you read the book, right? You're studying. Learning is when you're absorbing the knowledge. You're grasping the knowledge. It's kind of like that word apprehend and comprehend. If you apprehend someone, it means that you're actually taking them, like a criminal has run away, and you apprehend them. And hand is very close to hand, so you apprehend them. If you comprehend, it's coming to you. Into your
Extending one's knowledge.
Yes. Right? It's very interesting. So learning is comprehending. It's more abstract than studying. But you can learn, you can study. You can learn Russian, you can learn French, you can study Russian, you can study French. You can use them together. They have a different, very slight difference in meaning. Which is what I want to talk to you about now. One of the biggest issues in writing in another language, and learning another language, not just writing, but speaking another language, is what we call the academic register. So you're all university students, university professors. The register, the academic register, is what you want your students to learn. It's what you as students want to learn. How many different registers are there in a language?
Formal, informal.
So formal is the academic. So the informal registers. There are informal registers. What's an informal register?
Everyday speech.
Colloquial. What else? Slang. What else?
This is registered. Invective.
Much, yeah. Invective. Euphemisms can be both, I think. But it depends. It depends, the euphemism or the word choice depends on jargon. The jargon. And the jargon can be both academic or informal. If you're talking to medical doctors, they have their own jargon. Oh, the cardiopulmonary abscess was located in third sternum number 5, and they're like, what? Right? It's a very high register, but it's their register, it's their jargon, their private language, specialized language. But the jargon that's low jargon would be like mafia or gangster, rap music, specifically for the younger generation here. Rap music does not belong in the academic register. So the words and the invectives and the slang and the colloquial stuff you hear from American movies or other movies, you don't put them in your writing. If you do, your teachers will be really, really shocked. Right? So how do you know what's academic register and what's not? How do you know that?
Academic style, the Jews and literature.
It's literary style. That's the Russian explanation. Yes.
Just keeping rules, doing something informal and informal.
So there are certain kinds of rules, grammatical rules, like transitions. Academic register transitions would go beyond the moreover, furthermore, into indefinite clauses, phrasal clauses to open it up. And academic register words. Your word choice. How do you make that word choice?
Depending on the situation.
Some neutral. Lexical rules.
There's a very simple rule. Use the French word. If you're going to talk about something that's big or something that's large, that's the French word. Large, right? That's the English word. The academic register uses the French word. And why? Historically, the French came 1066, they were there for 130 years. All the nobility, all the aristocrats spoke French. And then English made a comeback, slowly, right? But in terms of the legal, it's in your language too. It's in Russian, in words for furniture, food, literary terms. All kinds of things are embedded in Russian language. But the French words, I told you, 60% of English comes from the French. So if you're going to use the academic register, you choose, you look in your dictionary and you look for that little F for French.
What about phrasal verbs?
Phrasal verbs?
Say, talk with something or tell somebody, should I use in the academic register reprimand or to tell?
I can hear you, sorry.
Should I use reprimand or to tell in the academic?
Reprimand is a higher level, right? If you're writing a formal letter, it would be a reprimand, right? To tell off, it's going to
sound.
That's a really good question. And this is something that I talk about in the IELTS workshops that I give, is that one of the things about writing in English and learning to write well in English is to use the right word in the right context. Many, many very advanced students, Russian students, they want to show, I have this incredible vocabulary. I'm not going to tell you about the time when my boyfriend said that I was beautiful. I'm going to tell you about that bony evening when my lover alleged that I looked like $1 million, right? So this is really important, because in English writing, and in not just writing but speaking too, but it's such a pleasure to learn a language. It's such a pleasure to get a new word, a word you really understand, and a word you want to use, you want to throw it to the world and say, say, you know, look, I know this word, I understand this very complicated word. If it's not suitable, use the simple word. Use the best word. Use the word that's clear. Do you know the 3C rule in English writing? Comes from Strunk and White's, the style guide for teaching graduate students to write. The 3C rule: clear, concise, concrete. And this Strunk and White guide came out in the early 90s, I guess, just about the time the internet came out, and it was revised. There are many, many writing guides. They all follow pretty much the 3C rule: clear, concise, concrete. And why? Why is that? Look what has happened to our world. We have become an era of digital technology. You can watch a YouTube video for 5 minutes and learn something really quickly. You can watch the television, and on the bottom of the television there are the sound bites. This is the news in Iraq. This is the news in Persia. This is the news in Paris. And they're just little words, little headlines. You can go on your smartphone and type, send a message. Very quickly, very fast. Everything is moving really, really, really fast. And students and the world don't concentrate the way they used to concentrate. If you even look at Dostoevsky, the writing that he has, those long sentences, those swirling, long, complex, they're beautiful. You know, I can only read them in translation. They're beautiful sentences. Nobody writes like that anymore. They don't write like that in English anymore. We used to. I mean, people copied the Russian writers, copied Dostoevsky, copied all, you know, and even somebody like 21st century Booker Man Prize winners, they don't write like that. They write shorter books. Hilary Mantel is an exception. She's got a 500-page book. Usually books are now 200 pages or less. International bestsellers. People don't write long sentences. They don't write a lot of information. They write clear, concise, concrete. What they're trying to do is cut to the chase. Cut to the chase. So, last night at 6 o'clock I did this. Last night at 6:05 I did this. At 6:10 I did this. At 6:30 I did this. At 7 o'clock I was. At 7:30 I was. And you said, wait, what's the point? Oh, I went out to dinner. So cut to the chase. This is 21st century English writing. We don't write long descriptive stuff, even in academic writing. The writing has gotten shorter. It's gotten powerful. And the paragraphs are shorter. Used to be paragraphs were like this. A whole page, one paragraph. It's not that way anymore. Still Russians do this. If you give a one-page paragraph to your writing teacher, that teacher will just tear the paper up and say, do it again. Cut to the chase. Give me the main points. A paragraph is 3 to 5 sentences. If it's very academic, maybe 7 or 8 sentences.
7 or 8 is quite okay. With us.
Oh, that would be like, oh, I could have a heart attack reading this. Yeah. Things are shorter. They're tighter, concise, tight sentences, and they're concrete. Give the facts, give the image, and tell me what I need to know so I can keep moving and go forward. I don't have time to keep reading this. Don't you see that in your own life? Has your attention span lessened? You don't want to watch a 3-hour movie. You want to watch a movie that's 1 hour, 1 hour, 20 minutes. You don't want to read a book this big, maybe this big. maybe this big. This is our reality. This is our world. And the language is shifting with it. And the English language is shifting faster than any other language. Why?
Because it's an international language.
Because it's international, because many, many different people who are not native speakers are using this language. So the point, you're exactly right, another 10 points. I should try to have a coffee. It's just amazing. You know, other languages, if you look at, I just know a little bit about Chinese from having lived in China for a long time. Chinese is not shifting that way. In fact, in China, they're talking about bringing back old characters. Not the simple script, but the old characters for prestige. It's insane. It's hard enough to read the simple stuff, you know? And in Russian, it's not changing.
In Russia, we have slow goers, as well as other languages, they're slow going.
Well, conservative. Conservative. More conservative. The French, are you changing? The French language, is it shifting quickly?
Yes.
It's shifting fast. Yeah. But English is just
very fastest.
as English. Yeah. English is said to be changing so fast, like a sentence structure is becoming simpler and simpler. There's 11 main sub-dialects of English, you know, like the Singaporean English, the Indian English, the South African English, they even call, what is that, the Sri Lankan English, the Queen's English, American English, Canadian English. There's 11 main dialects of English, and they're all moving quickly. Australian English, another one. They're moving together and moving quickly because it's an international language. So if you're using this language as your second or third language, you don't want to be reading something that's long and complex and complicated. You want to be reading something that's clear, concise, concrete. And you want to be reading something that gives you the right word, your word choice. And this is the other thing about English that's fascinating, it's absolutely fascinating, is that the word choice in English is said to be more creative than other languages. I don't know about Russian, but I know that it has more power in terms of a single word. I'm not talking about a phrase or a metaphorical phrase. You can say something in Chinese that is absolutely beautiful if you use the 4-character series. And you can probably say something in Russian that's very, very beautiful using a phrase. But in English, you have a choice for one kind of an idea, one kind of an abstract concept of 20 or 30 words. Because they're coming from so many different languages that you need to really use your thesaurus, your dictionaries. I'm a writer. I'm just about to publish my 3rd book. It's about Chinese culture. Just something I wrote for a hobby. I use my thesaurus at least 12 times a day whenever I write something. And I know my language. I love my English language. I love English. I love to read. I read a lot. I read literature. But every time I sit down to write, I write for the Chinese government. I write articles. And when I write academic articles, I just wrote an article about the Buryat, land and identity. Every time I sit down to write, I turn on my computer because I don't have my big thesaurus, you know, that big book. You know how we used to have big dictionaries. And this is when I was young. Now you have a computer, right? I just go to this site. Thesaurus.com. I use that site daily, many times. If I'm writing something, that site is up. I always look for it. If you have a word like, maybe just take a word like, sturdy. Sturdy. The child is a sturdy child. So sturdy means, what else could I say about that little child? my little child, Tamirchik, he's a sturdy little boy. So he's robust. He's healthy. He's energetic. He's hyper. He's strong.
Nimble. What about nimble?
Nimble. There's so many words you could use. And instead of calling you a boy, he's a child, he's a youth, he's a lad, all kinds of words. And you have to make sure that when you're writing, that you're choosing the right word. The other thing you have to make sure when you're writing is that you don't repeat yourself. If you're going to describe this child, boy, 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 people are going to go. So the collocation, this child, this boy, this youth, this lad, this Buryat child, this indigenous child, this, you have to keep your words flowing and moving smoothly. You have to make those collocations, make those connections so that your writing is smooth and holding the attention of your reader, right? This is why I use a thesaurus, even though it's my native language. I use a thesaurus the way that you would use your cell phone. I use it all the time in terms of writing. Okay? So I have one last thing to tell you, to offer to you, and then I'll ask you if you have any questions. Someone talked about phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs. And I have on this computer a list . For some reason, the idea of birth and death is complicated. And I know death is not a subject that's usually primitive, right? We talk about, but birth. When you talk about birth, first you're pregnant, and then what happens?
You give birth.
You give birth. And what about the baby?
Is born.
He is born. Okay? So you give birth, and the baby is born. So to be born is always passive voice, right? What about to die?
Person dies.
The person dies and he's
Dead.
dead. And can you say he was dead?
By the time he was dead.
By that time he was dead. So these two verbs are very strange because this one has to be I was born, and the phrasal verb is give birth, right? For death, you can also drop dead. Have you seen this? He dropped dead in the street. He dropped dead. Okay? What's the polite way to talk about it? We don't like in American English to talk about death. Pass away, or we also say no longer on earth.
No longer.
Yes! He kicked the bucket. He's no longer on earth. He passed away. Okay? What about if somebody takes their life? How do you call that? Commit suicide. Commit suicide. What if somebody kills someone else? Murder. Okay? So you have birth, death, and dropping in your sleep. Did you find it? No? Anyway.
In England, the baby delivery in hospital is called the theater.
The theater, yes.
I was shocked
maybe search сделайте.
Загрузки.
No. Well, if you can go back online and get it, then. In the meantime, I guess we're almost out of time. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions about English or grammar or anything? Any questions?
Dear students, go ahead.
No questions?
They know the English language.
They know everything. Wow, this is great. Well, the next seminar that I will show you is a specific one, and it will be about how to pass the IELTS speaking exam, how to pass the IELTS writing exam. I was an IELTS examiner in China for 7 years. So if you want to know how to pass that exam, because this exam is what we call a gateway test. You have to go through the gate. Yes. Yes, there it is. So this is a very useful document. If you go down. This document has all of the 50 most common ones. What's to break down?
Not to work anymore.
Or a person. A nervous breakdown, right? And then if you go to the end, it has exercises for you to do. If you want this is a very useful document. If you want to practice your phrasal verbs. No, I found it online, but it's good. It's a good one. To take up a hobby, fell out. If you fall out with someone, what does that mean? I fell out with my boss. I fell out. Had a fight. Okay? Move in, take up, sold out, threw away. You can see here we have the dative in between, breaking the phrasal verb. To save up. To save money, you save up for something. This is a very interesting part about English language is the phrasal verbs are necessary. You have to learn the preposition coming after it. To write down, to break down. And why? If your car breaks down, does it mean it goes down, down, down? It's kind of odd. Breakdown. And if you have a nervous breakdown, I guess you're down because you're in your bed. But it doesn't make any sense. It's just English. Okay? So this is something that I recommend for you. Either get a copy of it and just use it. It's useful. Okay? So that's all I have for you, ladies, and I hope it's useful.
Thank you very much.
See you on the next lesson.